Look around you right now. What do you see? Maybe you're holding a phone. Maybe you're sitting on a chair. Maybe
When
there's a
listing
table
items,
in
such
front
as
of
a
you.
book, a
If I
pencil,
asked you to
or a plant
describe
pot,
reality,
it's important
you
to
would
keep them
probably list
organized.
these items. You would say, the world is made of things. There is a coffee cup here, a laptop there, and a human being, me, right here. This is your intuition speaking. It feels obvious. It feels undeniable. But here's the hook, the absolute paradox that drives modern physics. None of those things actually exist in the way you think they do. To understand why, we first have to understand the operating system of your brain. Your brain is not a truth-seeking device. It is a survival engine. For millions of years, human beings didn't need to understand the quantum nature of the universe to survive. We just needed to know if that moving shape in the bushes was a tiger or a rabbit. We needed to know if that rock was solid enough to stand on. So, your brain created a shortcut. It evolved to group massive amounts of complex sensory data into simple, digestible icons. It draws a boundary line around a swarm of atoms and says, okay, stop processing, let's just call this a chair. It simplifies a world of infinite complexity into a world of static objects. This mechanism is brilliant for survival. It saves energy. It allows you to navigate the room without having to calculate the electromagnetic repulsion between your shoes and the floor. But this mechanism comes with a heavy price. It blinds you to the true nature of reality. We treat the world like a collection of nouns, independent, solid actors on a stage. We think the table is real. We think the phone is a fundamental unit of reality. But when physicists peel back the layer of human perception, they don't find things. They don't find nouns. The universe, at its fundamental level, does not know what a table is. That label is entirely a human invention, a mental sticky note we slap onto a patch of reality to make it easier to manage. So, if physics doesn't see things, what does it see? If you take away the chair, the table, and the phone, what is left? The answer is uncomfortable, counterintuitive, and it completely changes how you perceive your existence. If you take a physics textbook and look for the definition of a table, you won't find it. This brings us to the uncomfortable truth that shatters our intuitive view of the world. Physics does not see objects. When you look at a table, your brain sees a static, solid noun. But when a physicist looks at that same table, they see a dynamic event. They see a swarm of particles vibrating, exchanging energy, and held together by invisible fields of force. To physics, the table is not an independent thing. It is a temporary model. It is a snapshot of a relationship between billions of components that just happen to be stable for a moment in time. Think of a whirlpool in a river. You look at it and say, there is a whirlpool. You give it a name. You treat it like an object. But if you try to reach in and grab the whirlpool, you can't. There is no whirlpool separate from the water. The whirlpool isn't a thing. It is a behavior. It is a pattern of movement. That is exactly what your table, your chair, and even your physical body are. The concept of a solid object is just a label we put on a pattern that stays stable long enough for us to name it. What physics actually cares about. Since physics discards the idea of static things, what is left to study? The answer is the machinery behind the curtain. Physics is obsessed with verbs, not nouns. It cares about relationships, how components relate to one another, interactions, how energy is exchanged, changes, how systems evolve over time, constraints, what laws bind these systems together. This is a fundamental shift in thinking. The human brain is obsessed with the question, what is this? We want to know the essence of the thing. But physics asks a completely different set of questions. How does this affect that? How does this relationship change over time? What forces are holding this pattern together? The universe is not a collection of independent actors. It is a web of interactions. A particle, for example, is defined entirely by how it interacts with other particles and fields. An electron is an electron because of its charge and mass, properties that only have meaning when it interacts with something else. If you took an electron out of the universe and placed it in a void with absolutely nothing else, its properties would become meaningless. So, if things are just mental shortcuts and reality is actually made of interactions, we have to admit something humbling. The object is a human invention.
We have established that the universe is a web of interactions, not a warehouse of items. This leads us to a profound realization. The concept of an object is an invention of the human mind. It is a cognitive convenience, a tool. Think about it like a file icon on your computer's desktop. You see a folder labeled Documents. It looks like a little manila folder, but inside the computer's hard drive, is there actually a tiny yellow folder? Of course not. There are only streams of zeros and ones scattered across magnetic plates, held together by software instructions. The folder is just a user interface. It is a simplification designed to help you interact with the complex data without losing your mind. In the same way, the table is your brain's user interface. Physics strips away this interface to look at the code underneath. And in that code, there is no table, there is no chair. There are only relationships that have stabilized for a period of time. This brings us to the single most important concept of this entire episode. If you remember nothing else, remember this: nothing exists alone. In our intuitive view, we think a rock is a rock, regardless of where it is or who is looking at it. We think an object carries its existence inside itself. But physics disagrees. Existence is relative. Existence is relational. An object has no meaning if it stands completely alone in the universe. Position? Position is only meaningful relative to something else. Where are you? Here means nothing without a reference point. Velocity? You are only moving relative to a stationary observer. Mass? Mass is a measure of resistance to force, interaction, or gravitational pull, interaction. An object only exists when it has a frame of reference, when it interacts, and when it is part of a relationship. To say something is, you implicitly have to answer, is in relation to what? So, the fundamental building blocks of our reality are not the particles themselves, but the connections between them. The universe is not a collection of isolated dots, it is the lines drawn between them. Once you understand this distinction, that things are illusions and relationships are reality, you reach a mental point of no return. You cannot look at the world the same way again. The next time you sit in a chair, your brain will still see a solid object. That old software is hardwired, but your mind will know the truth. You will stop seeing a world of static nouns. You will start seeing a world of dynamic verbs. You won't just see a tree, you will see a process. You will see a temporary knot of sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water, woven together by photosynthesis, holding its shape for a few decades before untying itself back into the atmosphere. The tree isn't a thing, it is a slow-motion event. You won't just see a person, you will see a complex pattern of biological and chemical interactions, a whirlpool in the stream of matter, constantly taking in new atoms, breathing, eating, and releasing old ones. The world is not made of stuff. This is the final profound lesson of Episode 1. We are raised to believe that the universe is like a Lego set, made of little hard blocks that stack on top of each other. But physics tells us the universe is more like a piece of music. In music, a single note has no meaning. It is just a noise. It only becomes music when it relates to the notes before it and the notes after it. It exists in the relationship, not in isolation. Summary and key takeaways. The illusion. Your brain simplifies reality into objects, tables, chairs, phones, to help you survive. The physics. Physics does not recognize these objects. It only recognizes interactions, forces, and fields. The reality, an object is just a stable pattern of relationships. It is a whirlpool, not a rock. The truth, nothing exists alone. To exist is to interact. The bottom line, the world is not created from things. It is created from relationships. When you change your focus from the parts to the connections, you stop looking at the map and you finally start seeing the territory.